אז שלום לכולם ותודה רבה שבאתם. אנחנו נארח היום זכרון בסלון, כאן בקמפוס. אני ככה במילה לעמותת זכרון בסלון, מי שלא מכיר. זו עמותה שמחזקת מסורת ישראלית לציון יום הזיכרון לשואה ולגבורה. ובסלון שלנו היום אנחנו נארח את רינה קווינט, שתכף תספר את הסיפור שלה. וזהו, אז תודה שוב, ומי שרוצה ככה להתיישב זריז, אנחנו...
It's okay? Okay. Well, thank you for inviting me, and I am very surprised and very pleased and honored to meet such a large crowd. I didn't know exactly how many people would come out, and everybody being young and good-looking and dressed nicely. It's really quite amazing when you think about how far we have come. And thank God we've got a country and we've got all these startups, and I've been lucky enough not to be invited to many of the things. I'd like to start off by asking, anybody here have relatives or friends or you know somebody close who was in the Holocaust? Oh, before that, should I tell it to them? If anybody has any questions, and if you're hesitant speaking in English, just like I'm hesitant speaking in Hebrew, you can ask the question in Hebrew. If I don't understand it, I've got a good translator here. And if it's easier for you. If you can, and in English, then fine. Okay, let's get back. Who has relatives who were in the Holocaust? Where?
Poland.
Where?
Woman.
Yeah, and where were they during the war?
All over.
What is all over?
From Ukraine.
Were they in camps? Were in hiding?
They were in hiding.
In hiding. And Christians?
No.
In the woods?
In the woods.
You can't hear him. He's saying his relatives were in hiding, but not in camps. They were in the forests, in the woods.
In cities, they traveled all the way to Kazakhstan and then back into Europe.
And they talked about it? No, they didn't talk about it. Okay, somebody else raised their hand here. Yes?
Latvia.
From Latvia? And where were they during the war?
In Latvia, so they were sent them to Poland.
By whom?
I don't have a lot of.
You don't have
so
this.
that was
Okay.
what I heard from my grandmother.
Yes.
And
Was
that was
that-
her family. She never shared a lot of details.
That's why I'm here to talk.
Yeah.
I'm a grandmother, great-grandmother, and I'm willing to share. Somebody else raised their hand. Yes, please. But you have to speak loudly. I'm an old lady and I don't hear. But stand up so everybody else can hear too.
My family was from Transylvania, Romania. They were in Auschwitz.
What did they do in Auschwitz to survive? Do you know?
My grandfather worked with his brother in all the work camps in Auschwitz.
Doing what? You don't know.
Forced labor and
Okay.
factories, the wall sector, airplane sector.
Okay. Thank you. Somebody else? Yes, please.
Hi, my grandparents were both, Holocaust survivors. My grandfather was a partisan, and my grandmother was in Birkenau. And she
What did she do in
survived.
Birkenau?
She never talked to us about it when she was. They split in the war.
And did he talk about the partisans? You know what the partisans are? People who were in the forest, and then they made bunks under the ground, and they went from place to place and trying to get food, and trying to sabotage the Germans. Yes.
It was. They never
Talked about it much.
They never could talk about it. They met after the army, and then they were back. It was, a miracle. But
I think every survivor is a miracle.
yeah.
And certainly I think I am as a miracle. And not only that, but Boaz's brother was working in London. He lives in Israel. He's an Israeli, but he was in London and he took some girls on a trip to Poland. And he went to the synagogue, which I will show you, and he said, in this place, in 1942, he was born in what, 1987. So in 1942, even his mother wasn't born. In a place that somebody has a miracle, the way you said, you have to make a special prayer. Al Hanes. And so what kind of miracle was it? He says, because his grandmother, meaning me, ran away, his mother was born. And because his mother was born, he was born. And because he was born, he's able to bring in children, Jewish Israeli children, to this world. So when you say a miracle, I don't know how any of us are without a miracle. And if I tell you my story, you're going to say that it sounds very disjointed. It doesn't make sense, because I'm going to tell you many things that really don't make sense. They're contradictory. I'm going to tell you that I was born in Poland. I changed my mind. I was born in Germany. I'll tell you I was a boy. No, I'm a girl. I told you that I had 6 mothers. My book is called A Daughter of Many Mothers. 6 mothers. I only remember the last 2. I don't remember the mother who gave birth to me. I will tell you that many things that we go through. I will show you that I was very, very sick. Every one of these things was a miracle. Having 6 mothers was definitely a miracle. Every time my mother disappeared, whether she was killed or she was shot or whatever it was, another woman became my mother. And when that mother wasn't there, another and another, until I was adopted in the United States. I'll start from the beginning. If you have any questions, stop me as I go on. I don't have a prepared script. I don't know exactly what's going to come. And if I don't make myself clear, it's been a busy day already, just stop me and ask me. English, Hebrew, whatever language you feel like. My story is different from most stories because 1.5 million Jewish children were killed, were murdered for no reason except that they were Jewish children. And I survived between the ages of 3.5 and 9.5, being alone most of the time. That already makes me different, right? 1.5 million children who were killed. Most children who were killed were maybe in the forest. Many of them were in monasteries and convents, in hiding on false papers. That wasn't me. I was in a ghetto, a slave labor camp, various concentration camps, and I was liberated from Bergen-Belsen, which is a well-known, have you all heard about Bergen-Belsen? Because the British that liberated took a lot of pictures, and Alfred Hitchcock, who was a big producer, director, he took pictures, but people didn't even want to see them because they were so terrible. Nowadays you see things on television, but in 1946 when they wanted to show in the movies, now you can get it on YouTube. My story is different because when you lose your mother and your father and your brothers and the rest of the family, you have nobody. But that's not me either. The people who adopted me in America became my mother and father, and their brothers and sisters became my aunts and uncles and cousins. I had grandparents, not biological, but they were wonderful grandparents, and my children had grandparents. Most survivors don't have the luck to have children. And then I had a good childhood. And then my story is different because it has a happy ending. I am living in Israel now. I've been living here for 30 some odd years. I was married to a wonderful man for 60 years. We had 4 children, 22 grandchildren, and 1 Holocaust survivor, and 44 great-grandchildren so far. Thank you. And their daughter, Shira's, and Boz is one of my great-grandchildren. I think she was number 40, something like that. I change my password every time I have another baby. It's very easy to remember. Sounds funny, but it's a good way. You know, the bank makes you change every 6 months, so I wait to see how it is. Okay, September 1st, 1939, the Nazis invaded Poland. And when they came in strong with an army, marching with tanks, airplanes on top, bombs going on, there were dead people, dead horses, dead dogs, people were running all over. Anybody who was rich enough to have enough money to get a wagon was able to go to Russia. They thought that that would be safer. When Germany invaded Poland, they divided Poland. 1/3 went to Germany, 1/3 went to Russia, and the central part remained as the general government in Poland. We lived in that place. The place that I lived in was called Pietrków. And there were many important people that you might recognize. One of them was Rabbi Meir Shapiro. You're nodding your head, so you know who that is? Do you want to tell them? Okay, he left Pietrków to build a place called Chochmei Lublin, and he started something called Daf Yomi, where people read a certain part of the Talmud every single day, and then they. When he left, Rabbi Lau took over, and Rabbi Lau was killed at the same time with my mother. The two of his sons survived. One of them became chief rabbi of Israel, and now his grandson, David Lau, is the chief rabbi of Israel. So there were many other people in there. When the Nazis came in, people started running all around. My mother took my two brothers and me down to this basement where there were potatoes and other things, just in case, like you have a miklat now, and that was ready. So they had something like that. We lived, I have pictures. In 1989, I went back to Poland, and I have a lot of pictures from there. We lived, I found all this out. I didn't know any of them. I was 3.5 when the war started, 9.5. At the age of 6, I was taken away. You can see over there. Oh, this is great. We lived in this house. I found the address. I found the house, 4-story house, and my aunts and uncles lived on top. And if you look closely over here, and on the next slide, in 1942 we were thrown out. In 1989, I found a mezuzah still on the door. Every Jewish home in Israel, every restaurant, every office here has a mezuzah. And to find it in Poland, the Polish woman living in the house, when I told her about it, she was surprised. She knew what it was, but she had never seen it. It's been painted over many times. We were told the Polish people wouldn't let us come in because we came back to get our property. I don't want to get any property. I don't want anything like that. The mezuzah was important because they didn't need it, and it showed a symbol that once there was life in this place. We were told if you bring chocolate, coffee, leather belts, and dollar bills, you can get in any place. The dollar bills meant a lot. Russia was in charge. It was under communism, and Poland was very poor in '89. Now it's a rich country, and they have plenty of their own. This is the woman is there, and behind her there's a closet with many nice things. I have a closet like that in my house, and you have many of the things like a kiddush cup or a Havdalah cup or different a menorah, and there were things there which was apparently a Jewish home. There was a very beautiful parquet floor and a ceramic stove and terrible, terrible stairs. Now the reason I'm showing you this is because it's pretty unbelievable, but a lot of things I'm going to tell you are unbelievable. In 1930, when my biological parents were married, my mother had a prenuptial agreement. Do you know what that is? How many of you know what it is?
הסכם ממון.
Yeah? So say it loudly.
הסכם ממון.
Okay, which means that whatever she brought into marriage, she keeps, whatever he keeps in case there's a divorce. They didn't live long enough to have it. But I know that my mother had beautiful furniture, and she had carpets, and she had bedding, and she had jewelry, and she had all these different things. So, I don't know what she looks like. I don't know what she's tall, short. I don't know what she did. What was that? One at a time? You want to do that? Okay. Early on, they came and they took my father and my uncle to a slave labor factory. They were taken to the Hortensia glass factory. I'd been back there also, where they made beautiful glass, which they sold for the like Venice now, beautiful platters and vases and cups and plates. They took my father and my uncle. People said people were lucky if you were taken to slave labor because there were rumors going on that the Germans were killing people, that they had gas chambers, that they were throwing babies out of. Nobody wanted to believe these terrible things because Germans were civilized, cultured, educated people. They would actually take people and put them into a gas chamber and kill them the way you kill rats and bugs. Nobody wanted to believe that. My father and uncle went away. When they came in, the Germans put a barbed wire fence around the Jewish section, and that was known as the ghetto. People outside of the ghetto weren't allowed, Jews weren't allowed to live there. They moved in. And then people, little shtetl, little villages, they couldn't live there. They moved in. So think of your homes. If you have 4 and 5 and 6 families, 30 people maybe to a room, but very crowded. There wasn't enough to eat. People were starving. There wasn't enough medicine. People were sick. There wasn't enough heat. And Poland was a very cold country. People were dying, but they weren't dying fast enough for Hitler and his henchmen. One night, middle of the day, middle of the night, all around, they came in banging down at the doors yelling, "Schnell, schnell, fast, run. You've got 10 minutes. 10 minutes to pack up whatever is important to you and run out. And leave and go down these stairs." Now think of yourself. You've got 10 minutes. If there's an earthquake, if there's a hurricane, if there's a fire, you're leaving your house. What would you take? What would you take?
Pictures.
Pictures. Pictures of who?
Family.
The family baby. Maybe you want to take the family. Maybe you take the grandmother or the baby. Pictures are very important. If you come to my house, which I would like to invite all of you to come, I've got pictures all over. But things that are very important.
Jewelry.
Jewelry that you could sell for something like that.
Passports.
Or money.
Papers.
Passports. Identification. Maybe food. You don't know where you're going to get next meal. Maybe blankets and warm clothes. Maybe the baby, the pictures of the baby. You have to think very quickly. And some people have things waiting just in case. Other people took pillowcases and put things in. The people just rolled things up. And we were taken to this big square where you ran down these steps and people fell on top of each other. There was pandemonium, there was chaos. People were scared, people didn't know what was going on until we got to this big square. This square used to be used on Thursdays and Fridays as a shopping place. They didn't have Rami Levy or Super Sol, and trucks used to come and sell vegetables and fish and blankets and whatever you needed from there. Now it is empty. By the way, my mother owned that house that I showed you. My grandparents owned that apartment on the corner in the white. I have 2 deeds, but Poland's not getting anything back. And I must tell you, I like living in Israel and I don't care. But they're making all these deals about coming there. Nobody's discussing about bringing back the property. From here, we were beaten, and like animals, one following the other, we were chased until we got to the synagogue. The synagogue, you can see on the bottom, the Jewish star, Magen David, and you can see a beautiful building. This was where Rabbi Lau was the chief rabbi. There are no Jews left, not one in all of Pietrka. So they don't need a synagogue. So they made it into a library. In the back of the library, you see 2 women there. I hired them. I don't speak Polish. I hired them to help me find, and they did. They found my birth certificate, my brother's birth certificate, my parents' marriage license, my house, the cab, lots and lots of different papers, documents that I had. In the back of the library, which used to be the synagogue, there's a door. Does everybody see the door? Very, very important. Inside the synagogue, if you ask the librarian to open the curtain, behind the curtain, what do you see? An Aron Kodesh, an ark for the Torah. And inside there's lettering. What is that lettering? Aseret David wrote. And there are holes. What are the holes?
Shooting.
Shooting, they're bullet holes. So if anybody was standing nearby, you can understand in a room like that, if you were all around, the room was crowded. They had 2,000 people. They couldn't get 2,000 people in. As many as they could, they got into the synagogue. The others were taken into the Rackle forest. They had to dig ditches, and then they were shot into the holes they made. They became their graves. But the synagogue is packed with people. Shooting is going on. I am 6 years old at this time. I was 3.5, I told you, when the war started. At this point, my father was taken away. I'm 6 years old. What would you do when you were a 6-year-old girl or a boy? I was a girl, 6. My brothers were 8 and 9.5. What do you think we were doing with my mother? Yes, I heard somebody say it. Say it louder.
Clinging on to her?
Hanging on to her, holding her, squeezing her, hugging her, right? What do you think my mother was doing?
Protecting.
The same thing. I think she was trying to hold us. Maybe I don't know how this happened. Behind that door that I showed you, there was a man. Beckoned to me like this. My name was Fredja, or Fredel in Yiddish. He said, run, run. Why would I run when I'm so scared and my mother's scared? Why would she let me run? I don't know what happened. Maybe my mother pushed me. Maybe God pushed me. Maybe I was brave. Maybe I had chutzpah. Maybe I was stupid. I ran out. The soldiers easily could have shot me. And you're talking about a miracle? They didn't. It was a miracle. They didn't shoot me. Maybe they didn't see me because it was so crowded and there's a little kid going around. Or maybe they felt that the next person shoot her. I don't know how it happened. All I know is that I ran out. That was the last time I saw my mother and my brothers and all of those people. They were put onto those cattle cars and taken to Treblinka, which is one of the extermination camps, one of the first ones. When they got there, after a terrible ride, they had to get undressed, their hair was cut. They heard screaming in a little house down the block. When the screaming stopped, other men pulled out the bodies. It was a gas chamber, and they put the next group of people there. When I see a group like this, I hope my mother is looking down from heaven to see we're living in Israel. I have children, I have grandchildren, I have clothes, I have food. I have a group of people who want to know about the Shoah to make sure it doesn't happen again. And let her see that I have a good life, and let her say, we remember, and we're not going to forget. I can't imagine her last trip with her children. Was she worried about the little girl she let go to a dangerous neighborhood? Was she worried about the 2 boys? She didn't know. I never heard from any of them. If you go to Treblinka, this is me with one of the times I went to Treblinka with a group of Matzat HaChaim, March of the Living, and I've been back there many times. There are 17,000 stones to remember 860,000 people who were murdered in Treblinka. Half of my town, half of Warsaw at the beginning, and my mother and 2 brothers. Nobody's buried under those stones. The big ones have the name of the city. Pietrka is one of them. Warsaw, Lodz, many of them there. And people come and they put a Yortzeit candle, a memorial candle there, just to remember, and maybe say Kaddish. And I've been there where we've had a different kind of tickets to remember. But nobody was left. Later, well, they threw the bodies out because they didn't have crematory. And later Hitler came and he made them sure to put flammable liquid on to burn all the bodies. So when you used to go to Treblinka, you'd find bones and ashes. And in Medani, they have a whole mountain. You've been there, of bones. You want to describe it? No, of bones and ashes. That's all remained of the people. Well, that was the first part of me. This man who told me to run, what's he supposed to do with a little girl, 6-year-old girl? He took me to my father, who was working in a glass factory with men. My father hugged me and kissed me, was very glad to see me. The men, everybody helped me. All my life I've had help. The men tried to hide me behind a furnace, behind a stove, under a bed, under a mattress. But after a while, my father said, "You're a girl, you can't be here. From now on, you're not a girl. Your name isn't Fredja, and you're not 6 years old. You are a boy. Your name is Froyam, and you're 10. Say it over and over and over. My name is Froyam, I'm 10 years old, I'm a boy, my name is Froyam. I'm a 10-year-old boy, my name is Froyam. 10-year-old boy. What am I? I'm a boy, and my name is Froyam." And I have to remember that and speak like a boy, or try not to speak and not to be seen. But you have to remember you're a boy. I became a boy. And you know what? God was watching me. The men helped me, and I survived it. I worked very hard. We were supposed to bring water because they needed water for the molten glass, the hot glass. In the factory, the fires are going all the time and the glass is coming out. Also, the men needed to drink. Germans didn't care about people being thirsty. But if you wouldn't drink and you would faint, you wouldn't work. And their whole purpose was for you to produce and to work. I worked. There were German shepherd dogs, big ones. And every time they would take a bite of somebody, if they would take a bite of somebody's hand and they couldn't lift their hand, they would shoot you. If you can't work, we don't need you. If it got infected, too bad. Shoot you, there are other people to replace you. So people were being shot and disappearing every single day. As hard as we worked, and as much as we tried, and I can tell you many things that happened there, one day the Allies were getting closer. This was the end of 44. Who are the Allies? The Americans? I can't hear you.
United
Russians.
States, England, France.
United States, England, and Russia.
And Russia.
Yeah, Germany occupied France. United States, Britain, and Russia. And when they were getting closer, Germany wanted to hide everything, all the crimes that they had committed, and they wanted to take people out of the concentration camps, the extermination camps, the work camps, get whatever was left there. What's the difference between extermination camps and concentration camps? Extermination camps is like when you have somebody come to exterminate the bugs, when you're killed juking with gas, with poison. Concentration camps, people were taken to work. Sometimes they had exchange. In Bergen-Belsen, there were many Dutch people who were very good in diamonds, and the Germans wanted to use them. Although one time, Eichmann was asked, there was a man being taken to Treblinka, and he knew a lot about atomic energy, and they were building an atomic bomb. And they said to Eichmann, "We need this man, don't take him away." And Eichmann said, "No, he was chosen to go to Treblinka, off you go." It didn't even matter there, you just wanted to kill and get rid of them. When the Allies were getting closer, we were moved, and we had to go to where the cattle cars were. Those cattle cars were meant for cattle, for animals, for horses, for pigs, for cargo. No steps, no ramps. People had to push the others out or pull them in. And when they got into those cars, 80 to 100 people, it was pitch black inside, cold, no seats, straw and everything. As many as they could, they pushed in. Sometimes it could take 2 or 3 days to get there. From Poland to Germany, it wasn't as far. But if you go to Greece or Germany, it's distances. People went crazy there. Nothing to eat, nothing to drink, no toilets. You can imagine the smell there and the hysteria. Sometimes there were little openings on top with barbed wire, and icicles would form. And somebody was close by, could take it off and have a sip of drinking from the icicle and pass it around. People screamed, people died, people fainted. Finally, we crossed the border from Poland into Germany. There were 6 extermination camps: Auschwitz, Majdanek, Sobibor, Chełmno, Belzec, and Treblinka. Where were all the camps? In Poland. Why? Well, first of all, out of the 6 million, 3 million people, Jews, were living in Poland. That was the largest majority. So they want to get rid of them first. Second of all the train tracks led in to, you've been there, so you know some of the train tracks, various pictures of the, from Birkenau. And third of all, the Polish people at that time didn't mind seeing full trains, 5,000 people coming in, empty trains leaving. And the next day, full trains, men, women, and children. And where did they live? Where did they eat? Where did they shop? What did they do? Nobody asked, nobody cared. So the world was quiet, and they could go on. So Poland was a good place. But now they're trying to hide everything. So they started sending people out on death marches. Some people had to walk in the snow without shoes, without socks, nothing. Many of the people died on these marches. And some people, like in us, were put onto these trains until we got into Germany. And when we got out, we jumped out. We used the snow to eat it because we were so hungry. And we used the snow to drink it. And there was light from the heaven. There was light from the sky. So we could see who was with us. I was with my father and with my uncle. And Germans on motorcycles with sidecars. One was driving the motorcycle and one was sitting on the side seat. I don't think they have them now. And they made an announcement, you're being taken to camps. Men on one side, women on the other. Our camp was all men, but 2 other camps, woodworking and tanning of leather, were men and women. So men and women had to separate. My father had a problem. What was his problem? Me. I was with the men. But when you go into a camp, what's the first thing you have to do? You have to get undressed to go into the showers. Why do they care about you going into the showers? Well, they don't care if you were clean. But first, maybe they do care. You don't want to be around people who are filthy with lice, with fleas, with feces, people who haven't bathed for weeks and who smell and who have lice all over them. Germans were clean and proper, was one reason. But the other reason, you have a very nice ring and you have a necklace here, and also you have good shoes. You have to take everything off and leave it. They could take everything away, and when you get out of the showers, they can give you an old uniform or some sort of guard. My father realized that if I get undressed, they would see I'm not one of the men, and they would kill me, and they would kill him, and anybody here who helped me, right? He found a school teacher, and he asked her if she would keep an eye on me. He gave me a picture. The pictures that you said were so important. Picture of my mother, and my father, and my brothers. He says, look at the picture. The war is going to be over right away. I promised to meet you in our home in Piotrków. He promised. Fathers are supposed to keep their promises. My father didn't keep his promise. I never saw him again. I did find a train schedule with his name, his number, my uncle's name, and the 2 Lau brothers. I don't know if they knew each other, but their names started with L, so it was alphabetical. So that's why they happened to be together. And this is a card when he entered Buchenwald. You had to sign in, like you do when you go to a hospital or someplace, to say, well, I guess we have a sign in here, but to say, what do you have with you? By that time, I don't think he had anything, but you have to sign in. So I know my father got to Buchenwald beginning of January 1st, 1945, the end of 44, he went there, which means that that's probably when I went into Bergen-Belsen. I never saw my father. He handed me over to the teacher, and she became my new mother. And she said, come, Fredja, we will walk like mother and daughter. We were walking in the snow on the mountain. Down below, there were 2 men lying in the snow with their pants down. Freezing cold snow. Why would 2 men lie in the snow with their pants down? Anybody have an idea? If a Jewish woman ran away, you don't look typically Jewish. If a Jewish man ran away and he had been circumcised, if he had a brit, you think you're going to fool us? We know who's a Jew and who's not, and you're not going to get away with any of this. I don't think as a little girl I even understood what was happening, but all the women were talking about it. And it took me a while to figure out what they were talking about. As we were walking in the snow, if somebody sat down for a minute, they were shot. If somebody fell, they were shot. So as we went, there were bodies of blood and bodies of blood. I was walking with this woman. When I got to the United States in 1946, I had frozen toe, a big red frozen toe. And they took me to a doctor, and the doctor really didn't know what it was, because nobody sees frozen toes like that in America. When he realized I probably walked in the snow or in the cold, they were able to treat it. But it was not something that was known to them. We walked there, we came to Bergen-Belsen. When we came out of the showers, every woman would get some sort of uniform. Only the people in Auschwitz, by the way, had numbers on their arms. In Bergen-Belsen, you wore one of these things, or it was written on the side, if you were a worker. As a child, I don't even think I had that. I didn't even count very much. This woman stole a black coat, I'm sorry, on the side. This woman stole a black coat in one of the things, and I think she saved my life with that, because she kept the coat and her body heat around me to keep us a little bit warm. Every woman, 5 women, this group, you get one blanket to cover yourself. You get one, every 5 people get a blanket. We slept on the stone floor. Lice, fleas, rats, any kind of dirt you can imagine being over there. One person turns, blanket goes, how far does the blanket go there? Every day. These were, by the time we got there, the barracks, they were all broken down. So there wasn't even a place, it used to be for 6 people to sleep, but it was all broken down, so we slept on the stone floor with the lice and fleas. Every day, hundreds of people died, and the women would take their blanket, put a body into it, and every place you went, you don't have that picture, because when I speak to young children, Yad Vashem felt that this was just too difficult to see. But there were dead bodies. There were 10,000 bodies like this lying around. When I was very, very sick with typhus on the other side, with diphtheria, and I found myself, I don't know how I got there. Wait, somebody, okay, if somebody took me or if I went outside, it was better even being in the cold air, even it was cold, than being in those stinking, miserable barracks. And I found myself lying outside. Could you get back to the other, this picture? I think you saw it before. There it is. The woman next to me was dead. The other one died 20 minutes. This one will die 20 minutes. Everybody was dying. The last 3 days of Bergen-Belsen, there was no water. We had to drink from the puddles, and there was no food. The Germans claimed that the armies that came were bombing things, and they broke the water pipes. And when the British came in, they were able to fix the water pipe and get us water, and they found lots of food that the Hungarian Red Cross sent in, but we never got it. So hundreds of people died. Auschwitz and Majdanek, 2 big extermination camps, were liberated in January. Bergen-Belsen wasn't liberated until April. Now how many people died in between that time? As I was lying under there, all of a sudden, people started walking and running, and people started shouting and making all kinds of sounds, and I didn't know what was happening, and I was very sick. What happened was that the British came in, and with big megaphones they said, "We are the British Army. We have come to free you. You're free. You can go home. You can go wherever you want. We brought you food, we brought you medicine, and you're free. You're free." Where do I want to go? I don't have a mother. I don't have a father. I can't move. The first thing that the British had to do was make huge holes to bury 10,000 local things. 55,000 people died after altogether in Bergen-Belsen. But around us, they made these huge ditches, and they even got German and local towns to help. And when you go to Bergen-Belsen now, there are big, like a tell, you know, that underneath it's a mass grave, 10,000 bodies. And then they burnt down all the houses that the British, all the barracks that the Jews lived in. Do you have that picture, Shira? I think you do, yes. They burnt down everything. It was so filled with worms, with lice, with fleas, with rats, with any kind of dirt you could imagine. There was nothing there to save. And they took anybody, all the dead bodies and the half-living bodies out, and they burned it. The houses the Germans lived in were made out of cement and brick, and they made it into hospitals, makeshift hospitals. Because I was one of the lucky ones, Sweden opened its doors to 6,000 survivors of Nazi concentration camps, and I was one of them. And I have this paper which proves to me that it said that I was on a transfer from the Swedish Red Cross from German concentration camps to Sweden. And they took me by stretcher. I just word the word Luanka, Alunka, because I have to speak in Hebrew and I really don't know how. They put me on an Alunka, and they brought me to one of these makeshift hospitals. But because I was lucky, I was taken from Lübeck to Malmo in Sweden by ship, and they're brought into a DP camp. The mother that I had wasn't there anymore. I found another mother. Don't remember her at all, but I stayed with her, and she took care of me. But I was very sick with typhus, with diphtheria, and I was put into a Swedish, very good Swedish hospital in Hässleholm. One of the things that I found when I was writing the book, or the woman who wrote with me, Barbara Silver is her name, my temperature chart from 1945. Can you imagine? And I had fleck typhus and diphtheria. Typhus it's not here anymore. It's been eradicated, maybe in third world countries. And diphtheria, you and your children probably got injections in 3 months to get rid of diphtheria. But I had those, and it's listed here. And this is my temperature chart. And they had it still. While I was there, a wonderful Swedish young couple came to visit me. They brought me a doll, and it was Christmas time. There were red and white candy canes and other goodies, and they asked me if I'd like to go and live with them and be their daughter. Well, I thought that was the best thing that ever happened to me. Of course I wanted to go with this beautiful couple. But the people around me said something I didn't understand. They said that I was Jewish, and that all the Jewish children would be taken to Palestine, and in Palestine I would meet my mother and my father and my brothers. I didn't know they were dead already, but Palestine was the place that all Jewish children would be taken to. So I didn't want to go with this Christian couple, even though it looked so appealing. I wanted to go to Palestine. Why did I say, please answer this. You can all yell it out. Why did I say Palestine and not Israel?
Didn't exist yet. There was no Israel.
You all know the answer.
Before Israel,
In 1945, there was no Israel.
Yeah.
When was Israel born?
48.
1948. Just imagine, just think about it. If Israel had been born in 38 and 48. Just imagine if the countries of the world had opened their doors for us. Nobody wanted the Jews. Just imagine if we had friends in the countries. We had no friends. That's why Israel is so important. That's why we have to be so good and friendly to each other. That's why we have to make sure that our country, if you like the government, if you don't like it, if you like the army, if you, the Hafganot and everything else, you have to keep on thinking that we have to be united, we have to be strong. Because if we had friends in the 1930s and 40s, maybe 6 million people would not have all been killed. So thank God there are people around now, and we have to remember that. When I got out of the hospital, this is a picture that somebody found. That's me on the bottom. There are other pictures of, okay, but that's me. I'm really looking like a little refugee camp, a girl. And I was sent to another camp in a place called Tinsquid, where I was with children who were going to go to Palestine. On the other side of the same house, there were people who were going to go to America. There was a woman by the name of Anna, and her son Sigmund, who was 16, and her daughter Fanny, who was 9.5. They were born in Germany. They had been in Bergen-Belsen, and they came to Sweden. And now their brother sent passports and visas and papers that he would be in charge of them, so they wouldn't be, in charge of the government. And they were going to go to America. I was going to go to Palestine. While we were waiting, this little girl, Fanny, died. A lot of people died after the war. Her death was my luck. Her mother had all the papers, and she asked me if I wanted to be her daughter. Of course I wanted to go be, everybody said to go to America, you're so lucky, and you can always go to Palestine from there, but you have to go to America. I got a new outfit, I got a green pantsuit, never had anything like that before. I got shoes. I have a new name now. My name is Fanny. I got her birthday. I didn't have one of my own. I didn't know any of my birthday. And she was born February 15, 1936. And I got a mother, I got a brother, I got a new name, I got a new country that I was born in. I'm a new me. And we went on a ship, and there was music, and there was dancing, and there was food, and everybody was so happy, and we were going to America. And nobody talked about the past. And we got off in America, we saw the Statue of Liberty, and the big high-rise buildings. They weren't like the ones you have in Tel Aviv now, but the Empire State Building. I thought I would live there because they said everybody lived in big houses. And I didn't know what that was a big house. We were met there. We went for immigration, and I was absolutely legal. My name is Fanny Phillipsthal, and my birthday, and my mother, and everything. And our family picked us up and took us to a place, Lindenhurst, Long Island. The children were wonderful to me. They had a good time with me. They started teaching me English. Say man, say woman, say chair, say package, say milk. Every day I was learning new words, and I was repeating them. And I thought the language was growing with the words I knew. And I knew nothing. I had learned to comb my hair. I had to learn to short my shoelaces. It was terrible. But everything was wonderful. In the summertime, nobody was being killed. Nobody was having problems. We went up to the country, just like people now go to Tveria and the Golan Heights and the Galil. People in New York went to the Catskill Mountains, where there were little rooming houses, and children went to day camp. And I went to day camp, different kind of camp, and I learned to go swimming, and I learned to ride a bicycle, and I learned to pick blueberries and play hide and seek, and do all the things that you probably did, and it was wonderful. I learned so many things, and every day there was no excitement, and plenty of food, plenty to eat and plenty to drink. Nobody was being shot, and nobody was being killed. One day, Anna's family came, looking very sad, very glum, and they said, Fanny, that's me, pack up your things, we have to leave. I did as I was told. Nobody explained to me where we were going. Sigmund, my so-called brother, was there also, looking very sad and crying, and they took me to a cemetery. And there was one hole with a casket my new mother, Anna, died. A lot of people died because she may have been bitten by a rat or poisoned with some sort of things like that. And they started new antibiotics in 1943. And penicillin came out. And they spent a lot of money trying to save her. She was just very sick, and she died. They were burying one person, one. In Bergen-Belsen, you saw that there were hundreds, and there were 10,000 eventually lying there. Nobody cried in Bergen-Belsen. And here, one person was being buried, and everybody was crying, except me. I didn't know you're supposed to cry when somebody dies. In Bergen-Belsen, you just threw the body out. You went back to see, did they leave maybe a piece of bread, or maybe an outfit, a shirt or shoes or something like that. Everybody was crying. Maybe they thought I didn't love Anna. I did love Anna. I remember her face. I don't remember the other mothers. She died, they were burying her. And then we went back to sit Shiva. Jewish people have 7 days of mourning. And the family again had a problem. What do you do with Fridja? That was my name now, or Fanny. They really didn't want me. A woman brought me over, but now that she was gone, what did they do with me? So there was one person in that family who knew a family, Leah and Jacob Blow. This picture was taken when she was 100, and that's me with her. It was written up in the paper. But they were 46 when I met them, and they asked that Max Goldberg was the Shadchan, and he asked, would you like to meet a little orphan girl who needs a home? Maybe you like her. I went there for Shabbat, and the house smelled beautiful with chicken soup and cake, and it was real Shabbat atmosphere. The only thing I didn't like is they had a little dog, and you know how I feel about dogs, those German Shepherd dogs. But he was a quiet little, he wasn't so quiet, but he was little, and they said he would be okay, and he was. And after a while, we became very, very good friends. Buddy had Keller, we called him. And when it was time to go home, guess what they asked me? Would you like to stay and be our daughter? This was the sixth mother, and this time I also had a father. Of course I wanted to stay, and they gave me a very good life. I started off in public school. They tried to put me into first grade. I was big. Put me into third grade. The teacher gave a spelling test. I was looking around, and she thought I was cheating. I'm too stupid to cheat. I don't know how to read and write. How could I cheat on a spelling test? You know what I'm saying? I hope everybody understands. Yeah. They took me to another class. Finally, my parents realized that I just couldn't survive there. So they put me into a private school, and they got me private tutors. And by the end of the year, I was speaking English, and English became my mother tongue. It's the only language that I became an English teacher. I taught at Hebrew University English. Can you imagine a child who didn't know how to speak? So she was 10 years old, all of a sudden is teaching it. And we went traveling, I had friends, I had toys. When I got older, I went dating. I married a man who was absolutely the best husband in the world. He wrote me notes every day, thanking God for saving me and thanking me for marrying him. And every day I got a note saying of how he loved me and how special. He made me really feel very much wanted. In 1981, there was a gathering of the Holocaust survivors. We don't have that picture. Anyway, I can tell you about it. I don't know what. Here it is. In Binyanei Ha'olah in Yerushalayim. And survivors came looking for family. And my family said, you make believe that nothing happened. Because I had a mother and a father and grandparents and aunts and uncles, and my children had it, and we never talked about it. And they really didn't even know that I was adopted. My daughter said at 12, when my father died, she found out that I was, they weren't really my parents. We never discussed it. I was very much ashamed of being adopted, It was only the children who were taken away from their parents because they were on drugs or drinking or sick or something like that. It wasn't such a nice thing to remember. I found my adoption papers, by the way. It was hard to find, you weren't allowed to get them. Now you can. But my husband was a successful lawyer, and he got one of the judges to open up the files. So then I had my papers. In 1981, we tried to find anybody, nobody. So we wrote to Arlson, which is an international tracing bureau. And they wrote to me my name, my parents' name, my brother's names, the place I lived in, the address, the camps I was in, the ghetto, Sweden, child adopted in America, case closed. So everything I tell you now, I can prove, even though I told you at the beginning that there's so many contradictions. And 1989, I started working in Yad Vashem. They had a trip and I went back. And I found all the things. This is my birth certificate. And these two children, Yad Vashem chose them for Dor HaMshech. They happen to be a brother and sister. This little boy now has 6 children of his own. And this is how I found my birth certificate. And amazingly, Yad Vashem this past July 16th. I don't know if anybody saw when President Biden came to Israel, went to Yad Vashem, no 2 survivors. That's me. And you can see him, huh? You saw it?
We don't have it here.
You don't have it here. No, because Yad Vashem took this video a long time ago, and this just happened this July. But you can see how happy he is looking at us, and he told us about his tragedy, and he kissed me, and he thought I was very sweet. Here you can see Benny Gantz and Yair Lapid and Bougie Herzog and Biden, and us sitting over there. And here, I can pass this around because you can see all the different people who were here, starting with Blinken, Secretary of State of the States, Rabbi Lau, Benny Gantz, Yair Lapid, Joe Biden, Herzog, Diane, the Marines, and Chazan. And here he is speaking to us. So this little girl, you know, who I brought my American citizenship to show him that I became an American citizen. And I think it's very important when I'm asked to speak, even more than once in a day, and it gets a little, you don't know what you said before and what you're saying now, so I hope it was okay. But I think it's very important to tell my story. There aren't that many survivors. You said your grandmother wouldn't talk so much about it. I think as long as I can, the people who were killed deserve to know that we know about them, we remember them. 6 million Jews were killed. We have to laugh as much as we can. We have to love as much as we can. We have to work with Intel and do all the things that you do that I don't understand very well and help the world be. We have to be the people they didn't have a chance to be. Thank God we have a group like yours. And in the United States, I found this article which says that 62%, do you have it there? 62% of the people, yeah, let me read it to you. From Wikipedia, Holocaust coverage comes to kinds of growing ignorance about the Holocaust around the world. One recent survey found that 63% of Americans do not know that 6 million Jews were murdered in the Holocaust. Over a third believe the number of maybe 2 million fewer. Nearly half of Americans cannot name a single Nazi concentration camp or ghetto, despite the fact that there were over 40,000 camps and ghettos. In New York State alone, nearly 20% of millennials and Gen Z response believe that Jews caused the Holocaust. Similar results were found in other countries. So when I think you can speak, if you get a chance, and I hope you don't, to speak to Holocaust deniers who say it never happened, or whatever it is, we have to know for ourselves. And so I think you have to be ambassadors. Many people, I spoke to a German group about 2 weeks ago, and one of the women got up and she says, you know, I've read a lot about it, but reading it, it could be fiction. I don't know if it was true. You're the first person that I met in life. And I've been to museums. So you can say, I heard from one survivor, and maybe you heard from many others, and you've got museums. Yad Vashem is a wonderful museum. If you go to New York or Washington. And Eisenhower, who was a general at the time, before he became president, he went into the camps with the Americans. And Patton wouldn't go in because it smelled and it was so disgusting. But General Eisenhower went in, and he wrote, biggest description, you won't believe it. I'm using different words, but on the Washington Museum around there, it says, someday when some bastard says it didn't happen, you can tell him, I saw it with my own eyes, and you have to believe it. So that's written on the outside. So now you become ambassadors to pass the story around. Anybody who wants to hear it, lots of stories on YouTube, on Google, all over the place. Recently that I did 25 years with Steven Spielberg. So lots of it there. So if you have any questions, any comments, please, I really would like to hear from you. And as Boaz said, if you want to do it in Hebrew, that's okay. Questions. Who has a question? A comment? Yes, please.
The guy that helped you in the shul, in the first shul, was Jewish.
I think he may have been my uncle, but I'm not sure whether he was a relative, you know, like a brother. I think he was. But years ago, you would never use somebody's first name. So you would say Aunt so, their Uncle Doda, or when I go on a bus, I used to go on a bus, I don't know, Safta. I was everybody's Safta to sit down. So I don't know exactly who he was. But he must have been an angel. Somebody else. Yes.
You said that English is your mother tongue. Do you remember Polish at all?
No, I don't remember Polish, but I do know Yiddish.
Yiddish.
So I'm not sure that I spoke Polish at home or Yiddish. I wasn't very at home very much, but in the camps, Yiddish was the common language. Because you have somebody from Poland and somebody from Hungary and Germany and Tunis. The language that most people spoke was Yiddish. When I came to America, I spoke Yiddish mostly. Anybody else? Okay. Nobody wants it. If anybody is interested in the book, I can inscribe it to you or to your wife or your husband or to yourself or whoever. It's 50 shekel. And if you don't want it, it's okay. And if you change your mind, you can get it on Amazon. Okay.
אז תודה רבה שוב לכולם, ולך רינה הבאנו לך תעודה שלא תביא לך. תודה רבה לכולם. יש לנו בחוץ הזדמנות, מי שרוצה להתנדב עם שורדי ושורדות שואה, עם עמותת מצד הגבורה, יש לכם ברקוד, מי שרוצה, יש גם דפים שחולקו. זהו, תודה רבה שוב.